The story begins with Romberg's stern warning. He advises Ike that no matter what happens, he should not remove the mask from his face or the cloak from his body. Romberg warns that if Ike reveals his identity, the Demon King will show no mercy. Ike stared into Romberg's eyes, full of chaotic thoughts. Suddenly, the once solid wall was bombarded with a barrage of attacks from the goblins. They broke open the doors and were ready to kill everyone inside. Soldiers with armor and shields are no match for the brutal attack of the goblins. Chaos ensues within the walls of the fortress as the goblins, who are numerous and cruel, kill mercilessly. In contrast to the commotion below, the general stood quietly by the window in the command room, silently observing the commotion. The sound of Ike opening the door caught his attention. The general remained silent during Ike's sudden arrival, as if he expected his arrival. Ike presented him with three options: surrender and become the Demon King's captive, or kill himself to preserve his honor, or escape secretly. The general watched Ike silently, then moved, indicating that he chose none of these options. Ike wasn't too surprised, took out his staff and quickly summoned a spell, killing the general in an instant.
Ike ordered the goblins to stop killing the innocent soldiers and treat the wounded. Alone in the room, Ike slowly removed his mask. He was, in fact, a normal person, more precisely a person with the memory of a Japanese individual from a past life reborn into this world. Ike grew up and currently serves in the Demon King's army as the current leader of the Immortal Battalion in the 7th Army Corps. He always tried to hide the deal he made with Romberg, knowing that if he revealed his true identity, death would be the only path for him. The room where Ike lives is protected by a powerful magical barricade, not even a fly can enter. As Ike intends to remove the spell, he is suddenly surprised to encounter a servant who is cradled under the table. He also faced the woman, and they spoke together. He begged incessantly for his life, and swore that he saw nothing. In his haste to stand up quickly, he hit his head on the edge of the table and suddenly lost consciousness. Ike wasn't sure how to handle the situation. In the Valancheer region, a mysterious female figure watches Ike through a magical orb. He was very surprised by Ike's battle skills as he conquered Arsenum in just 1 week. However, the woman also has concerns about Ike's future. The next day, Geron, the orc's chief of staff, along with Ike, inspects the city. Geron fears the sparse population, but Ike disagrees with his fears, saying that Arsenum is a trading city. And without people, there is no trade. A group of merchants approached him to ask about the taxes they had to pay. Geron is about to scold them for their lack of manners when Ike intervenes, responding with a calm but profound admonition. Suddenly, Ike senses that something is wrong and is about to be hit by an attack from a stone golem, only to discover that he has suddenly gone somewhere else. Ike realizes that he is in the domain of Sephiro, the mysterious woman who watches him through a magical orb. The golem continued to attack, but Ike dodged it and smashed it with his staff. Sephiro praised Ike's growing strength. Sephiro, the commander of the 7th Legion, a part of the demon army and also Ike's superior, was the only one privy to his secret. Sephiro summoned Ike to inform him that the 6th Demon King, a multitasking ruler, wanted to meet him directly. So, Sephiro and Ike headed to the domain of the multitasking Demon King. In Arsenum Castle, the servant gradually woke up to an invisible wall with a notice instructing them to wait obediently. The servant stood up and walked around, unable to resist the tempting dishes laid out on the table. Meanwhile, in Dorber Castle of the Demon King, Ike finally met the supreme commander of the demon army. When the door to the Demon King's chamber opened, Ike was surprised to see that Daracutton, the Demon King, was a beautiful woman. Ike subtly replied that he was merely following Sephiro's orders to take control of Arsenum. The Demon King questioned Ike about his true identity, which Ike chose to keep silent about. Sephiro intervened, stating that Ike was the descendant of Romberg, renowned as the defender of Hell. The Demon King continued to question Ike about his claiming of Arsenum, where he surrendered soldiers with almost no bloodshed. Ike was unsure how to respond. Demon armies typically slaughtered ruthlessly and instilled fear in people, but as a human, Ike couldn't bring himself to do that. Ike could no longer endure the silence. He described how, in the past, despite people's fear, they did not obey. Comparing a city ruled by demons to one replaced by humans, Ike pointed out the clear benefits for the demon army. The Demon King asked if this idea came from Romberg, and Ike confirmed it was from his father. In their conversation, Ike felt trust from the Demon King and wondered if, like him, she was also a reincarnation of a human. The name Darakuten, describing the great sixth Demon King in Japan, reminded Ike of a well-known character. The Demon King ascended, approached them with Sephiroth, and said that in their next meeting, Ike should reveal his true face behind the mask. After the Demon King left, Ike breathed a sigh of relief. Having survived the tension akin to imminent death, Sephiroth gave Ike a hint about the reward offered by the Demon King, which seemed more like a punishment. Ike would become the lord of a city, the heavily damaged and ash-covered Ivalice located south of Arsenum, which could serve as a front line in the upcoming wars. Ike's mission was to protect Ivalice and double the taxes upon his arrival in the city. Ike couldn't help but feel dismayed. Nevertheless, as a lord, he had duties to fulfill. He ordered the city gates to be repaired, followed by mobilizing engineers and laborers to rebuild everything. According to his subordinates, after assessing the situation, the repairs could take up to 6 months. Ike pondered on the matter, considering that a city under repair would be an easy target for human attacks. However, this wouldn't be beneficial as Ivalice was a frontline city in need of gate repairs. Ike needed more manpower and proper time allocation. He ordered the work to be completed within a month. One night, a man secretly observed the rapid progress of the gate repairs and was amazed. He intended to report immediately to his leaders. People and demons worked together day and night under the strict management of Geron. It was a sight he had never experienced. With the continuous 8-hour shift changes within a 24-hour period, Ike's leadership and reward system greatly contributed to everyone's morale. Geron couldn't help but admire Ike, calling him a true genius and rightfully deserving to be called the right hand of the demon army. When Ike returned to his room with a mysterious barrier, he was surprised to see the servant from the previous day lying on the floor, her mouth stained with syrup. He noticed a plate on the dining table with traces of food. Thinking that perhaps the woman had just eaten and then slept, the servant slowly opened her eyes, cursing and wondering where she was. She was startled when she heard Ike's voice from behind, immediately kneeling and pleading for her life, willing to do anything. The girl was terrified of dying. Ike assured her he would not kill her and even helped her cut the chains on her wrists. When asked, the girl revealed her name as 13, a slave named in sequence. Ike remained silent and then stood up, remembering something. He told 13 that now that she knew he was human, he couldn't simply send her away. 13 remained kneeling on the floor, stating that she saw nothing and promised to keep the secret for the rest of her life. Ike believed 13's words, but in return, he asked her to be his assistant from that moment on. It was a command she had no choice but to accept. 13 didn't wait for Ike to finish, she immediately followed, establishing an official contract between the two of them. In the territory of the Demon King, his subordinates reported on the war situation in the Rosalia region. Overall, it was peaceful, but Rosalia planned to form an alliance with neighboring countries to change the situation. In a narrow alley in Rhesus, the capital of the Kingdom of Rosalia, there was a magic game on the street attracting many spectators, including 13. The magician placed the ball under one of the 3 cups and swiftly shuffled them, but the ball suddenly disappeared. People doubted the trickery, so they confronted the magician. Ike pulled 13 away from the alley and stepped onto the main street. On this day, Ike wore simple attire to assess the enemy's condition. He spotted the soldiers they called and suspected that the signing of the alliance was indeed happening. In reality, it was an old agreement activated in times of emergency after removing the interests between nations. Ike explained that this agreement had been activated 3 times in the past, pushing the demon army back to the eastern side of Dorber. Suddenly, the voice of the magician called out 13's name, accusing her of meddling with his cups that led to his defeat and injury. The man demanded an unreasonable compensation. Ike witnessed everything in secret and used his ice wand to freeze the legs of the magician's assistant. He then threatened the magician by revealing the reason for military drills in the city. Ike was surprised to hear the Rosalia's army plan for revenge against the demon army. With Ivalice as the chosen battleground, where he had recently been appointed as lord, on the next night, the Rosalia army suddenly attacked the border area near Ivalice. Besides swords, they carried large guns aiming to destroy Ivalice up close. Following the order to fire, armed skeletal warriors emerged from the ground, forming the skeleton army. As the soldiers of Rosalia were thoroughly confused, goblins armed with bows and arrows were ready on the hills, ready to shoot. By the time Rosalia realized it was a trap, it was too late. Ike's forces quickly halted the enemy, forcing them to retreat. From his observation post, Ike was praised before he left. An arrow struck his chest, causing him to lose consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself in an elegant room. Still confused about why he was there, he was surprised to see Cefiro lying next to him. Cefiro woke up at Ike's scream, slowly realizing they were in Ike's room. Cefiro patched up the wound on Ike's chest before leaving, reminding him to be cautious because he was still human. After Cefiro left, Ike silently contemplated. In the kingdom of Rosalia, Deputy Commander Gal Rocha was furious to learn that the White Wall Knight Order had retreated from Ivalice. Gal Rocha didn't care about the reason for the withdrawal, so he immediately imprisoned Commander Aristi, the leader of the White Wall Knight Order. Upon Ike's return to Ivalice, he sat in his study room, deep in thought, holding the arrow that struck him. He suspected it came from Rosalia. Ike avoided the possibility of a spy from Rosalia within Ivalice, so he thought about the possibility of someone inside being responsible. Succubus Lyle's entrance interrupted Ike's thoughts. She hurriedly approached Ike's desk to examine his wound. While Lyles attempted to seduce Ike, 13 and Geron entered the study room. Lyles got irritated by the interruption and referred to 13 as human, leading to a heated argument between them, both refusing to back down until Geron intervened with a reminder. Ike called for Geron's help to find the location of Ariste, the commander of the White Wall Knight Order. After a few days, Geron provided information that Ariste was imprisoned, considered guilty for the defeat. Upon learning this, Ike immediately planned to visit the Rosalia prison that night. Hearing the plan, Lyles diligently followed Ike. Despite usually being unfortunate, Lyles proved useful, quickly evading the guards and facilitating Ike's entry. The Rosalia prison was large and strongly constructed. Lyles subdued another guard and obtained the location of Ariste's cell, but it wasn't private, prompting the guards to alert and start encircling the intruders. Ike left the guards to Lyles and proceeded to the top floor where Ariste was imprisoned. As Ike opened the door to Ariste's cell, she lunged at him with a powerful punch, which he narrowly avoided. Responding with a strong blow from his ice wand, Ike brought Ariste down to the ground. Ike was surprised to discover that Ariste was a woman, as he had assumed the Rosalia commander was a man. Setting aside his surprise, Ike directly asked Ariste if she had ordered an assassin to kill him. Instead of answering, Ariste questioned if Ike was a true demon. In a moment of lowering his guard, Ariste seized the opportunity to point a knife at him, asking if Ike was human. Ike found himself caught between two threats, Ariste with a knife at his throat from behind, and a group of approaching guards in front. Without hesitation, Ike used his supersensory magic to immobilize his opponent. He then summoned the dark wind to sweep away the guards. However, the danger was far from over. A giant guard, standing at 5 meters tall, lunged at him from behind, wielding a hammer. Ike, always vigilant, swiftly dodged the hammer strike and invoked the power of darkness to retaliate, causing the giant to collapse. The intense vibrations from Ike's dark magic resulted in the balustrade breaking around them. Ariste, who stood at the edge, also fell, but Ike quickly flew to catch her and safely landed on the ground. There, Ike revealed his identity as the commander of the 7th Immortal Legion of the Demon Army. In response to Arist's question, Ike denied being human. He then pushed Arist against the wall, seeking confirmation of her involvement in the attempted assassination. Reluctantly, Arist half admitted to her role. Suddenly, Lyles appeared, preventing Ike from confronting Arist further. After getting her answer, Ike released Arist, clarifying that he didn't come to kill her. Before departing, he advised her to contemplate her actions following her recent defeat, implying that she should focus on what to do after accepting defeat. Arist remained in deep thought, even after Ike and Lyles were gone. The next day in Ivalice, Ike summoned his troops to the plaza, still contemplating the arrow that hit him the previous day. He was certain it was an enemy. But it seemed Arist was not directly involved. Ike assumed the incident might have been staged to appear as a human act. The last possibility he feared was having a spy within his own ranks. Using dark magic and mind-reading skills, Ike sought to identify the traitor. Soon enough, a dwarf approached to confess. On that very day, Ike visited Sepero in Valancheer, where to some extent, Sepero was already aware of Ike's purpose. The culprit Ike discovered was the vice-commander of the 7th Legion, the one-eyed dwarf named Jace. Due to issues within the army, Ike sought advice from Sepero. Sepero downplayed the matter, suggesting that it could be resolved with the appropriate payment. In lore, Jace couldn't believe that Ike survived an arrow attack and was now in the captain's place. Jace's anxiety increased when his subordinates reported the loss of contact with the goblin infiltrator in Ike's army, fearing exposure of their plans. Ike's sudden appearance surprised Jace, who tried to maintain his composure and even reprimanded Ike for being careless and getting injured. Ike, no longer tolerating the traitor's feigned ignorance, hinted at his leniency towards those who betrayed. Jace, confident in his own territory, called his soldiers to attack Ike. In that moment, Sepero emerged with a horde of skeletons, creating a shockwave that disrupted the region. Sepero's chilling incantation summoned colossal meteors that descended upon Lore, causing a massive explosion that obliterated buildings and architectural structures in seconds. The city of Lore crumbled. Sepero ordered his skeletons and giant forces to eliminate anyone who survived, insisting that not even an ant would be spared. Without mercy, the skeletal army and giants slaughtered Jace's troops. Jace, struggling amidst the crumbling walls, gritted his teeth in anger as he witnessed his overwhelming strength. Ike presented two options to Jace: surrender peacefully or witness everything vanish. Enraged, Jace shouted orders to finish Ike. Ike unleashed a supersonic burst of magic, halting his enemy's advance. A horde of dwarves, both ground-based and aerial, swarmed Ike from all directions. Ike responded by conjuring a dim shield and 1,000 dark arrows, swiftly annihilating those attacking him. Seizing the momentary distraction, Jace attempted to escape. However, he was intercepted by one of Sepero's colossal beasts. Cornered, Jace employed a smoke bomb to vanish into a white cloud and resume his escape. After a long flight, Jace crossed the city gates toward the outskirts of the forest, panting. Intentionally retreating temporarily, he prepared for a real confrontation with Sepero. Ike suddenly attacked, pinpointing Jace with a tracking parasite. Furious, Jace tried to showcase the power of his vice-commander status to Ike. Unimpressed, Ike used his supersonic bomb to immobilize him and then bound him with tree roots, pulling his limbs in different directions. Jace surrendered, revealing his true intention to tempt Ike into an alliance and control the demon army, proposing that their kind should dominate over humans and inflict pain, but they were restricted under the Demon King from unnecessary slaughter. Jace and others were angered by this limitation. As Jace spoke, he broke free and charged at Ike, declaring his true intention to kill him. Ike anticipated this and used his supersensory magic to immobilize everyone, including Jace, stretching him out again. Suddenly, something emerged from Jace's body. Sepero approached, reminding Jace that he had been abandoned and urged him to reveal his true identity. Jace whispered that it was Bastio, the captain of the 3rd Legion of Dullahan. In disbelief, Sephiro heard the revelation. At that moment, a one-eyed monster orb appeared, informing Sephiro that the Demon King requested his presence. Promptly, Sephiro and Ike headed to the Demon King's fortress, where Bastio was also summoned. The statements from Ike and Bastio were entirely contradictory. Bastio insisted that his version of events was correct and accused Sephiro's side of lying. Sephiro, unyielding, labeled Bastio as a formidable human. The Demon King, aware of the entire situation, acknowledged Bastio's deceit but chose not to act, arguing that no demon is without a hidden motive. According to the Demon King, a true villain deserves a position that suits their abilities. If Bastio were to be punished for his intentions, then all demons would face punishment. Regarding Sephiro, the Demon King recognized his sincerity but mentioned that the recent incident occurred due to his inadequate leadership. Because the two unique Legion commanders refused to back down, the Demon King ordered a showdown. The winner would be deemed correct. Bastio eagerly accepted this, sensing an opportunity for revenge. The Demon King set the confrontation for the same day next week, with a 50-50 battle mode between the two legions. Returning to his territory, Sephiro explained that in a 50-50 Legion battle, the commander's representation could give orders to the troops but not directly participate. The soldiers in this battle were magical constructs made of earth known as defective soldiers, acting completely under the control of the sorcerer with nearly identical abilities. Overall, it was a strategy game based on fair rules. The purpose of a 50 versus 50 battle was to test the leadership skills of both generals. In this upcoming competition, the Legion commanders did not have to participate directly and could appoint representatives. However, the battle's outcome would directly affect the commander's status. Initially, Sephiro intended to participate himself, but he changed his mind and decided to let Ike oversee the battle. Ike was flustered by Sephiro's decision. While he acknowledged Sephiro's superior commanding ability, as a higher-ranking Legion commander, Ike held Sephiro's life in his hands. At the Demon King's Dor-Bar-Bellel fortress, Sephiro contemplated a suspicious matter, a doubt lingering in his mind. The next day in Ivalice, Ike unexpectedly asked 13 if he knew any way to guarantee success in the upcoming showdown. Not surprisingly, 13, having no concept of battles, couldn't provide a useful answer. Ike then posed a hypothetical scenario to 13 about facing a forced confrontation, where 13 suggested attacking from a distance larger than the opponent, a primary tactic for a significant advantage. Ike considered giving his defective soldiers spears but quickly dismissed the idea. After a few minutes, he realized the need to create guns and immediately sought Sephiro, an experienced metallurgist. However, contrary to Ike's belief, Sephiro also had limitations. Meanwhile, in Avalon, Bastio and his comrades confidently examined their weapons, devising a cunning plan, confident of their success. Back in Ivalice, Ike encountered the Demon King in a delicate situation, unclothed. Ike thought the Demon King wouldn't recognize his true identity, but he was taken aback when the Demon King called him by his name. Feeling like his life was hanging by a thread, Ike hesitated and denied being Ike. However, the Demon King, thoroughly aware, knew about Ike's past memories and his origin as a human. Ike was further astonished by the Demon King's next revelation: the Demon King himself was once a human. Ike asked why, knowing his identity, the Demon King still allowed him to hold his position in the army. It turned out the Demon King had been observing Ike for a long time and even inquired if Ike was familiar with historical figures like Hashiba Hayoshi and Mayad Adashir, renowned generals from the Sengoku era. He also mentioned Ai Mahid and Takwa Kazumasu, indicating that these secondary but skilled individuals greatly aided him in becoming known to people, drawing a parallel to Ike's situation. Similar to his previous world, the Demon King needed skilled generals to shape the world according to his desires. He focused on Ike, believing he could contribute significantly to his goals. The next day, Ike examined the gun given by the Demon King in his studies. He was surprised that he anticipated his need for a gun, hinting that he might have seen more distant things. At Ivalice, Cefaro assisted in designing gunpowder and bullets for the gun. While the bullet issue was resolved, the gunpowder remained a challenge. Making gunpowder required charcoal, sulfur, and saltpeter. Charcoal and sulfur were easy to obtain, but finding saltpeter, formed from decaying organic matter, was confusing. Ike asked Jerome to take him to the oldest public bath in Yvelines to harvest saltpeter. The day of the showdown arrived at Doble Square. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, as most people eagerly awaited the start of the battle. Representing Yvelines, Ike faced Bastio from Avalon. Bastio, noticing Cefaro's absence, arrogantly assumed he had foreseen his defeat and decided to avoid the battle. His troops were clad in Damascus steel armor, the finest metal bestowed by the Demon King. Ike examined the guns provided by the Demon King, sensing his desire for a fair fight. As the battle cries echoed, Bastio's troops aggressively attacked, engaging in a fierce battle, while Ike's forces remained defensively positioned, thwarting the attacks. Overconfident Bastio was suddenly shocked by successive explosions. Ike's troops armed with guns unleashed a continuous barrage, toppling Bastio's soldiers. Ike drew inspiration from the three-tiered fire tactics used in the Battle of Nagashino. In this battle, he implemented a two-layered firing squad, a tactic that effectively altered the course of the battle, showcasing Ike's exceptional tactical brilliance. Ike glanced up at the highest seat where the Demon King sat, and his strategy seemed like a display for the Demon King of the tactics he employed.